Hi, I'm Rosanne and welcome to my May garden. It's been a consistently cold spring this year and many of the plants have been sluggish to get started. But two of the showiest stars of the spring garden decided to cooperate this year and bloom at the same time. I'm talking, of course, about the flowering crabapple trees and the tulips. However, there are also many subtle delights in the spring garden. In this video, I'll show you the May highlights, both subtle and bold. Trees are an important part of our garden for a whole host of reasons. From a design standpoint, they provide an interesting layer to the garden. It's hard to deny their beauty when they're loaded with blossoms. Plus, the crabapple blossoms provide nectar to the bees just waking up after a long winter. And once they develop fruit, they provide food for the birds. This time of year, though, it's all about the incredible fragrance and beautiful blossoms of varied shades of pink. We have 5 varieties of crabapple trees in our yard. The oldest and largest, at about 30 feet tall, is our spring snow crab tree. It shades our woodland garden and looks great in the back corner of our yard. Plus, it's covered for about 1 to 2 weeks with the most brilliant white blooms. For their tall and narrow growth habit, perfect for narrow spaces or small yards, we have 4 red barren crabapple trees. Their blooms are deep pink red and their leaves open to a pleasing bronze green color. In the spring, their colorful red blooms seem to tower over the garden and draw the eye upwards. Near the entry to our side yard garden, we have our diminutive Lancelot crabapple tree. This tree is over 15 years old and only about 5 feet wide, perfect for a small space. Another small lollipop-shaped tree is our royal gem crabapple. It has a gorgeous hue of pink blossoms. We've had birds nesting in this tree for many years, although not this year, at least not yet. Lastly, we have our Louisa crabapple tree. She's been featured in other videos of mine for obvious reasons. The graceful weeping canopy of the tree adds to the enchanted feel of our garden. This year, her blossoms are more white than pink, and I'm not sure why. Regardless of the color, when she is flowering and there are breezes, the entire yard seems to fill with fragrance. Before I show you our tulips, I'd like to give you a peek at some of our shade-loving wildflowers. This is our woodland garden. We've been working on expanding it for about 2 years now. We added a path for better access, and then, to increase the diversity, we added over a dozen new wildflower varieties. Some of the very first flowers to emerge in the spring are native woodland plants. They do well under deciduous trees. In the spring, before the leaves emerge, the plants get plenty of sun. Then, later on, the leafed-out canopy of trees protects the plants from the heat of the summer sun. Bleeding heart must be one of my favorite spring plants. I love the way the ornate, heart-shaped flowers dangle from the stems of the plants. They are very low maintenance, divide readily, and bloom generously for several weeks. One of my newer additions is Hepatica. Small in stature, at about 5 inches tall, it has sweet little delicate blooms and unusually hairy stems. The flowers of Hepatica tend to be pale pinks, blues, or lavender. After it's begun flowering, it pushes out very distinctive 3-lobed leaves. You won't notice it at a distance, but up close it's a charming little plant. Another relatively new plant is Jeffersonia. It's also referred to as twin leaf for its unique twin leaves. Sometimes we get plants for the foliage, other times the flower. For me, this purchase was all about the unusual leaves. A true, almost bold beauty in the woodland garden is the Trillium. White is a dominant color in the garden, and you can't help but notice the trillium with its brilliant white petals. Its botanical name is derived from tri, or three. The trillium has 3 petals, 3 sepals, and 3 bracts, more commonly referred to as leaves. The plant with the most unusual and exotic flower in the garden would have to be the jack-in-the-pulpit. The shooting star is another unusual but small flower. You can see where it got its common name. And then there's the mayapple with its large, floppy, umbrella-shaped leaves. I think I've hit the highlights of the woodland garden, so let's move to the front of the house. This year, the tulip display has been absolutely stunning. My husband and I planted over 200 tulip bulbs last fall. We did so all along the walk leading to our front door. We've been lining this pathway with tulips for many years now, refreshing it with new bulbs every 2 or 3 years. Even though it was a cold spring and we had some severe weather, the tulips came out just fine and have been blooming for several weeks. Rather than having all the bulbs bloom at once, I like to purchase some bulbs that bloom early, middle, and late in the spring. It keeps the color and interest coming alive. You can see in this scene that in addition to the blooming tulips, there are many with green buds waiting to open in the next week or so. In addition to varying the bloom time, I also like to vary the color, the shape of the bloom, and the height of the tulip. We do modify our color scheme from time to time. This last fall, we focused more on pastels than the super bright colors. Here's a selection of bulbs we planted last fall. You can see a full range of colors. We purchased our bulbs from a local nursery, although they were all imported from the Netherlands. I like to plant large clumps of the same type of tulip, about 10 to 20 bulbs per clump. It really shows off each of the varieties and keeps the bed looking orderly and intentional. Most of our tulips this year are classic single tulips, but we have 2 double varieties blooming this spring. They almost remind me of peonies, so it's no surprise that this one is called purple peony. The other one, edged in white, is called Dream Touch. You may have noticed that I have quite a few hosta growing in between the clumps of tulips. I love this pairing. The fresh green leaves of the hosta fill out the bed nicely and create a feeling of lush abundance, showcasing the blooms of the tulips. To plant the tulips, we prefer to use an auger and drill to dig the hole. This technique allows us to dig very deep and precisely, close to other plants. We like to plant the bulbs 7 to 8 inches deep, too deep for squirrels to dig them up. If you'd like to learn more about planting tulips, be sure to watch my video on the topic. Before I wrap up this video, I'd be remiss not to mention 2 flowering ground covers that really shine this time of year. That would be the sun-loving creeping phlox and the part sun, part shade-loving vinca. I'm a big fan of layering, and they are both perfect ground covers, now when they flower and later for their foliage. And so this ends the May garden tour. I hope you're as excited as I am about the coming summer season. Thanks for watching.